Oh,
Okay, sorry.
okay,
Sorry.
there we go. All right.
A
Now,
call bumped me out
where
for
are
some.
you?
Okay, so what I heard last was luxury market. I hope that we're still talking about that. So interesting stuff. In Vancouver, of course,
Wait
the luxury market.
wait a minute.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah.
We're going to ask you to repeat what you said
Okay.
first.
We
Okay,
just
sorry.
started live again.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So,
Sorry.
so we were talking when something disconnected. Sorry, a call bumped me out somehow. The Vancouver luxury market kind of held on during the pandemic, which was interesting. What we're seeing now, though, the movement is definitely what we're seeing in April is we saw a lot of activity in the kind of entry-level market. So right now, effectively, we're in a seller's market, and I think Samantha asked the question, are we talking about Vancouver or outlying areas?
Right.
So I'm referring to Greater Vancouver. And we saw a seller's market in numbers and sales last month in virtually every product type in every region except for two pockets, and that's Vancouver West Side and our North Shore West Van areas. But in the detached, so Vancouver detached, which would be our, kind of luxury, more higher end product, was kind of in a balanced market. Everything else in the Greater Vancouver pocket, including the West Side attached and condos, is sitting in a seller's market right now. So it's definitely being driven by that lack of inventory. But our sales, interestingly enough, are really starting to pull up to the area that we were in last year in the spring. So even though we're having lack of inventory, we're seeing those multiple offers. We're seeing a lot of activity on listings that are there. And even on our luxury end properties, we're seeing more of a return to a balanced market.
I think that the lack of supply seems to be the driver of the numbers going up. Also, we have always found it's been a cycle in the real estate market in that, after Christmas and cold weather and everything, and people sitting around, and as Cheryl likes to say, they've paid off their Visa or MasterCard bill from the holidays. And come February, people are just ready to move on with their life again. And I think that's sort of what is also happening here. I mean, Toronto and Vancouver, both of them, have a lot of money in the city. There's a lot of wealth. So there are people who are still investing and making Vancouver or Toronto home base, like it's their home. And I think that those are certain things that are driving the numbers up. And of course, look, Vancouver and Toronto are completely different cities. And Anne, I know you know that well because you go between the two so much.
Yes.
So it's going to attract different people. And look, businesses are happening again. Yes, I know some people say the restaurant businesses, certain ones have still, it's challenging. However, our business never stopped. Lawyers never stopped. People doing business with other people, it didn't really stop. So, like I said, the money is there in a lot of these professions and industries, and they support the real estate market.
Yes, and I think it's important to also remember that we saw a lot of the market transition. So we saw a lot of shifting and we saw a lot of movement, pandemic. The movement just happened to be to people who wanted to move further out and sell their condos and get a little bit more space and get a backyard. Now we're seeing the movement transition more towards condos. The detached market is getting very busy. It's probably busier than condos right now. But remember, we're getting a lot of influx of new residents into Canada. And British Columbia recently has eliminated any opportunity for stratas to impose any kind of rental restriction bylaw, with the exception of short-term rental. So pretty much that's all you can do. You can say that I limit my rental to 6 months or a year lease, but no one can effectively right now prevent or restrict the number of rentals in a building. They've now recently even proposed to remove the 55 plus. To the point that if you're in a 55 plus building, you can have younger families with you. You can have a partner living with you that's younger. So it's created a lot of opportunity for investment. And Vancouver has always been like a great space. We saw like consistent growth in our property prices in the last 20 years, and certainly in the last 10, I think they've doubled in a lot of pockets. So it continues to be a very strong place for investors when they look long term to put their money and see substantial growth. And as far as lifestyle here, I mean, I love Toronto. And to your point about restaurants, tell me where I get reservations, because whenever I try to book, they're all booked up months in advance. So they're obviously getting better. But I think that both markets have such incredible opportunity for both people making it their home as well as investment. And yeah, you know, to the point of that article that we were discussing last week about the worst, you know, they kind of label us as the worst places to buy. Most expensive.
Because it's expensive, but it's a good investment. And quite frankly, it's just my opinion, it's a safe investment, because when a city is consistently growing, like we call ourselves a mini New York, like we're in adolescent stage, New York's ahead of us. You know, we're a growing city. Just to answer, somebody was asking about Montreal. There's actually, 2 agents that will be on in June, so we will be discussing and comparing the Montreal market. So stay tuned for that. And actually, I think they're also going to be doing like the Laurentians, like sort of your cottage country area also. So we will be addressing that. And just to go back to the investment part, the rent, I don't know about Vancouver, but our rental market is crazy and expensive. So it makes sense to buy something in order to rent it out, because you're getting excellent rent, especially if you're buying it now. You're just starting your rent now. I mean, I myself and my husband, and you know, we own a bunch of properties, and people got lucky because we rented them a few years back already. We've had them. So we're sort of stuck at certain rental rates. But if you're buying now and investing now, you're going to start with a new tenant possibly. I mean, there's also the possibility of acquiring a tenant, but vacant possession's better. And we can always work that out. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I just looked the other day comparing Edmonton rental rates to Vancouver, and we're essentially double. We're double for a 1-bedroom for downtown core. And we're facing not quite the same shortage as Toronto is, I don't think, but we're definitely facing a shortage, especially for 2-bedroom units. And so that market was one of the first ones to pick up when the pandemic started kind of dying off and people were out there shopping for real estate. There were pockets in the Metro Vancouver area where we saw, you know, the majority of the people clicking on REW or Realtor.ca were investors, because the investors came back first because they realized that there were going to be these opportunities, and what a great time to start buying when the market was slowing down. And those opportunities, I think, will only continue to grow. And I think that much like Toronto, we are a big metropolitan city. We're probably 1/4 of Toronto, of GTA. But we are a gateway city, and very much like Toronto, I feel that overall, I mean, I never recommend people buy real estate with the intention of selling it in a year, right? It's more of a longer term investment, but it's a safe investment if you look at it that way. There's always these little ticks up and down, but my gosh, if I look at the market in the last 10 years, it's like this. In 20 years, it's like this. So consistency, if you're in there for comfortably for a longer run, like I say up to 5 years, you're going to, equity growth is significant in Vancouver. And whether that's your primary residence or whether that's an investment property, it certainly continues to be a very strong and safe investment.
What's going on with your guys? Like we have a lot of cranes in the air. And a lot of them, though, interesting enough, are building, yes, to sell to investors and for people to reside in, but also we're doing a lot of buildings to attract tenants. So they're in, one thing we've been discussing lately is how, like I was saying, my husband and I own a bunch of properties. Well, those are our properties. We can pretty much move into anyone, anytime, and have them leave. Anybody who's, let's say, 60 and up, who's looking to rent long term, they don't want to get kicked out of their place. So they're creating a lot of. Sorry, go ahead, Cheryl.
That's why the government is trying to make the builders who are acquiring these lands to make them into rental buildings as opposed to condos.
Yeah, but they're also high-end rental, typically, not affordable rentals.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Vancouver's doing that as well.
Vancouver is going through a big regional kind of replanning, rethinking, because we're thinking our population is going to be up to about 3 million by 2050. And that's a significant jump for our greater Vancouver area. So we're going through replanning of how this redevelopment is going to happen. And so very much so over the past 5-6 years, there's been a growth spurt in lots of cranes, but they've been centered in the downtown core area, the west side area of Vancouver. But beyond that, there's been significant encouragement to build at transit pockets. So we've seen a lot of hub, kind of almost new communities starting up where there's a transit line, where there's a SkyTrain line connecting the metro greater Vancouver area. But yes, I think there's been a big encouragement by government right now to build more rental. And so we see developers like Ani going in now and building exclusively rental buildings. Now they're not cheap though. Right. What is for a 1 or 2 bedroom property, you're paying a lot more than you would if you were renting it from a private property owner investor. There is that security, but it will cost you more. But there are more and more units like that going up and buildings going up. But what a lot of regions in Greater Vancouver are doing is they're encouraging developers when they're putting up a tower or a building to include a certain percentage of rental housing. And that's how they can get approval for their building, is to say 20% are to be rental, and even going further and saying there will, especially in the suburban areas, we want you to have like a lower rental income housing component that you guarantee for 10 years or 20 years in your development, and then we'll approve it. And of course, units are shrinking. And a lot of those units that are being built specifically for rental, they're small. Even the luxury, small. You don't get the big luxurious square footages.
Yeah, they're not even building, like in those types of buildings, I find that they don't even offer like the 2,000 plus square foot unit.
Not an option. No.
Which is interesting because there's a lot of people who can't afford to buy, or they're choosing not to buy because it makes more sense. And these are the people who need the larger units because they're trying to house so many people. But then that becomes luxury units, and the price tags attached are insane.
I'll give you an example. Sorry, there's a building that was built in Vancouver on the west side. It's probably about a year old right now, and it's strictly rental. Units start from 1 bedroom to 3 bedroom, but the maximum square footage is 1,100 feet. They're ranging price from $3,000 to $10,000 a month. And that's for like approximately 1,200 to 1,300 square foot 3 bedroom on a 6th floor, which is 7th floor. So they're not cheap. Those ones that are built for rental in Vancouver are definitely not cheap.
Because in Toronto, they're averaging about $6 a square foot.
Yeah. So a little bit more here. The average rent right now, if I look kind of towards the downtown core for anything 1 bedroom, is probably about $2,500. That's where we're starting.
Yeah, we're just shy of that.
Yeah.
I'd say we're just shy of that now. We're about 23 to 2400. 2400 probably. And we're talking small, like 500
Yeah.
square feet. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And rental only, they'll be starting probably at 3,000 if it's rental only for one bedroom.
Oh, you mean,
Yeah.
oh, so you're finding there, so, okay, to,
We relate to square footage, price per square footage. You're talking 1 or 2 bedroom.
no,
So
no,
we're
no.
sort of
No, that's not what I was going to go with. Actually, what I was just sort of saying is that there seems to be a price difference when there's a landlord, a private landlord versus the rental building. But in the rental buildings, they do usually offer a lot more. Like, for example, I live in one, for example, and everything is done for us. As much as I'm a landlord and I help out whenever a tenant asks for something, there's a little bit different of a level. I mean, I get presents on every holiday from our building. We have like activities. We've got candy in our, what do you call it, in our lobby for everything. So there's it is definitely different. It's more of a community, I would say, also being in an all rental building than having private owners who rent out the different properties.
Yes, very
Units.
true. You live in the friendliest city in the world, though. So that's why you probably get all the presents and the smiles. Toronto was selected as the friendliest city in the
Really?
I,
Yes.
I,
I read in the Daily Hive, friendliest city in the world, tied with a city in Australia, and
Melbourne. It's my favorite.
I just remember, and Vancouver didn't even make the list, and Montreal, I think, was 20th. And they based it on how many times people return, like tourists return, and Toronto scored really, really high on that. And how many people friendly scale restaurants, and how many people just feel like they're safe, and that if they're passing a stranger on the street, they feel comfortable to smile. And so you guys were voted, so that's probably why your building is just so extra friendly. but yeah, no, I definitely, speaking to the point about rental, I mean, there's a market there for sure, because I just don't think the developers are going to be able to keep up with the demand. And there's definitely going to continue to be that market there.
I think the biggest rental market opportunity is going to be in larger size condos, because the builders are not providing that. Mm-hmm. So that's my 2 cents. If somebody wants to buy a larger unit as an investment, I said it way back. I remember when they first started, I can actually even think of my client at the time. It had to have been at least 15 years ago, maybe even more. But I remember saying to this guy, if you can afford it, buy a 2-bedroom. Buy these units that are 1,200 square feet, because that was like considered a pretty decent size, but not even that big, like, because the 2,000 square feet old apartments were available then. But now 1,200 square feet, like, that's massive to people. And Cheryl and I deal a lot with sort of I don't even know if you call them empty nester anymore, because the kids have come back and then they go again, and grandkids, so whatever they want to call it, a certain stage of life that I won't refer to numbers. But when I just find that they really are going to have a hard time if they haven't sort of made that move yet. And if they're coming from these big houses, especially, if you're coming from up in Thornhill, you're like, the houses are much bigger there, the property's much bigger, and then you're experiencing this condo life and you want to be downtown. I mean, it's going to cost you, you're going to end up taking a mortgage out if you're buying.
Yes. And And I think that I've noticed a couple of those lovely properties going up in Forest Hills out there, and the low rises luxury properties. And I don't feel that there's enough for the demand that we're going to see. And I think that when I mentioned that during the pandemic, I felt that a lot of the luxury market, when it came to attached, held on. And I think that that's one of the reasons is we are seeing a huge demographic of people that are sitting on these detached properties, and they want to now, rid themselves of the responsibility of a detached house, take out that equity, and still be able to downsize in luxury. And it's a big step when we have these conversations, like out here as well, with people who are selling their larger homes and think that it's, really easy, we'll just downsize. But then when they sit down and look at the numbers and look at what the options are, it's frightening.
I wonder if that's what's also feeding our lack of supply, because the people who typically would make that move from a home to a condo are staying put because the condos are just not big enough.
I think what it also is that they've gotten to a certain age where it was easier pre-pandemic, 3-5 years ago, to make a move. Now, people who are 70 or 75, and then they go, forget it, I don't have the strength, the energy, I don't want to do it. I can still walk the steps if it's a 2-story home. So they're staying put longer. And then, as Samantha said, their kids come back or grandkids are going to be there, or something changes within the family dynamic, and it makes them hold on to their property longer.
Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap it up here, but we really appreciate you coming on. And if anybody needs help in the Vancouver market,
yes,
Anne is our contact there. And by all means, we highly recommend her. Feel free to, if you're not comfortable calling direct, call one of us. We're happy to answer any questions and then obviously introduce you, and vice versa. All good.
Yeah.
So
happy to help. I enjoy the opportunity to meet people from Eastern Canada, and I welcome,
because they're friendly.
Absolutely, they are very friendly. But by the same token, for anyone who is transitioning to Toronto, or what we have a lot of parents whose kids transition to Toronto and end up needing to buy something. So, 4 or 5 years in university, it is sometimes a really good option to buy something, and more parents are starting to do that because they see that as a valid investment. We'll buy it, hold on to it for at least 5 years, and then we'll see what the market does and sell it, rather than putting our kid, moving them around. And so these two ladies are incredible. Trust me, lovely to work with, very professional, incredibly friendly, always answer questions. So absolutely, I encourage that as well. And I am happy to pass on their contact information to anyone interested in, or anyone that even has any questions about the Toronto market, because it is vastly different than Vancouver in some ways.
It's always changing. So in order to stay up on the market, you want somebody who's always on top of it. And
encourage people. Every client I have, I encourage to be familiar with pockets outside of this area, because we are truly a very global market in Canada. And I think it doesn't hurt to have a contact in Toronto, in Montreal, and just stay in touch. Just have that realtor send you some information from time to time, just so you're aware, because you never know when you have an opportunity to have an investment come up that works for you. And so I think the wisest, the best consumers are the ones that are always learning and staying in touch, and having a professional out there who just kind of keeps them up to date on what's going on, so they're able to make healthy, good decisions for themselves and their families.
So in other words, but all three of us are combating that article and saying buy in Vancouver and buy in Toronto. It's a safe investment.
Absolutely. Canada is a country, and I think every city has its amazing things to offer. But I think with all due respect, there's a reason the prices are lower. All boils down in a world to demand, right? And I think that demand and opportunity, and if you can get in the market in Greater Vancouver or the GTA, go buy something in the outskirts. Even maybe you can't afford downtown, go buy something in the outskirts of the GTA or outskirts of Greater Vancouver. Put a tenant in there, get your money working for you. And I think I encourage that. If you can do it, sit down, make a plan, stay in touch with your trusted realtor and a financial advisor. And I think it continues to be a really, really great investment in both pockets.
All right, great. And on that note, everybody have a very happy
Yay!
Tuesday. It's not raining out there. I don't know. I think we have some of your guys' weather lately.
It's clear.
Which is a nice change. So I'm going to enjoy it.
Right.
Take care, ladies.
Yeah.
Thanks. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Bye.